go there. I'm very excited to be at the James Sedgwick Distillery in Wellington. I'm here with Whisky, Master of Whisky, Andy Watts. I've worked on 1 or 2 projects with them this last 2 years, which is called Whisky Journey. Basically creating whisky experiences for clientele and media within a home with 3 different types of lounges and settings and so forth as well. And getting deep down inside of what really goes around with whiskey. So Come Wine With Us started 7 years ago, and now we're moving towards Come Join Us, which is our new company, which will start or basically do our first Come Whisky With Us event taking place at the end of May, and then also that will be in Johannesburg, and then middle of June will also be taking place in Cape Town. Andy, it's great to be here. Thank you very much for having us. Please tell us, enlighten us, where did it all start? How did it all start with you and your whiskey journey?
Yeah, well, firstly, welcome to the James Sedgwick Distillery, the proud home of South African whiskies. And yeah, my journey was not your normal route to job. I'm not living the dream. I mean, I grew up in the UK and my dream was to become a professional footballer. I didn't make that. I became a professional cricketer, and that's what brought me to South Africa for the first time, 1982. After a few visits, I decided to settle here. I got working with a company called Stellenbosch Farmers Winery, and they then sent me back to Scotland to get experience in making whiskey. And in 1991, my 25-year journey with the James Sedgwick Distillery as manager began.
That's amazing, 25 years.
Well, that's 25 years. In 2016, I handed over the managership of the distillery to Jeff Green, who now looks after the day-to-day operations, while I concentrate a little bit more on innovation and the future and where we're taking our whiskies going forward.
That's amazing. I know you won a lot of prizes last year. I'm so excited because especially like Bains, I mean, single grain whiskey best in the world. I think you won it twice now, didn't you?
Yeah, Bains was, the whole concept for Bains actually started in 1999, which seems like a lifetime ago now. And it took basically 10 years to get that concept to the birth of the brand in 2009 when we first came onto the market. So we're actually 10 years old as a brand in July of this year. And
that's actually so short period.
It's a short period of time, and yet we've had amazing successes. We had from 2010 to 2015, we had 6 consecutive gold medals at the International Wine and Spirit Competition.
How many, if I may ask, how many people take part in an event like that, or awards basically?
It's the big competitions like the IWSC and World Whisky Awards is basically all of the brands which you are aware of taking.
Pretty much, they all enter.
Yeah, they all
that is incredible.
All start in those competitions.
All the big guys.
And of course, our biggest 2 awards with Bains were 2013, and 2018 when we got the World's Best Grain Whisky Award at the World Whisky Awards held in London on an annual basis.
Okay, tell us a little bit about the ranges that you all do here and the different vintages and so forth.
Yeah, this is it's quite a unique distillery in the fact that we distill both malt and grain whiskey on the same premises.
Okay. Can you give us, just for the people, 101 whiskey, what's the difference?
Okay, I mean, there are 3 types of whiskey. There's malt whiskey, which is made from malted barley and distilled in copper pot stills. The romance of the industry, you go to Scotland, you're going to visit a whiskey distillery, and it will be a malt distillery.
Okay.
Then you get grain whiskey, which is slightly less romantic. It's a continuous process where the raw material is generally maize or wheat. In South Africa, we use yellow maize. And that is where you create a lighter style of spirit. And then the 3rd category of whiskey is blended whiskey, which is a combination of the malt and the grain put together, which then gives you a blended whiskey. Now, the majority of people talk about malt whiskies, but actually there's only 10% of the malt whiskey which is distilled is actually bottled as malt whiskey. The rest gets blended with grain to produce
that's the biggest market,
which is the biggest market by far.
Okay.
So that's in a nutshell,
and
those are the 3 categories.
And it's quite tricky to blend whiskey, am I right?
It's, if you've been doing it a while, it becomes easier. But I always like to use the analogy of an artist. An artist needs a good canvas to create a masterpiece.
Of course. A product as well, most probably.
With a good canvas, then he or she, using different colors, can paint you a dark, stormy day or a beautiful, light, sunny, joyful picture. And the same with whiskies. The grain whiskey is the canvas, so you need a good grain. And once you've got that good grain, then you can take the different styles of malt whiskies and create either something which is deep, smoky, and got that stormy feel about it, or you can create something which is very light and very easy drinking and, you know, nice and approachable. So yeah, you can basically, if you've got the building blocks, you can create anything when you blend whiskey.
Awesome. And compared to our whiskies in the world, what makes it a little bit different?
I think when I came back from Scotland as a youngster, or a relative youngster, and I was tasked to improve the quality and the quantity of whiskey which we produced in South Africa, I kind of came back with that, yeah, I know it all attitude now, and I very quickly learned I didn't. You know, firstly, the big difference is the climate. You know, I'd learned how to make whiskey in a cold climate in Scotland. You come to South Africa, you've got this incredibly warm and almost harsh climate, somewhere where you wouldn't expect whiskey to be made. So I had to quickly learn that, you know, you can't beat the climate. So the quicker you get the climate working for you and you don't try and work against it, then the better chance you have of making good whiskies. And that I had to learn through the process. You know, with fermentations, we now temperature control them so that we create a good environment for the yeast to convert the sugars into alcohol. Maturation, you know, we've got a higher than normal angel share, that portion of whiskey which is lost during the aging period in wood. You know, the accountants would love that angel share to be lower because it means you're not losing as much product. Yeah. But as technical people, we believe that it really helps our whiskies develop much quicker and portray themselves as being older, more mature at a younger age.
Totally. And do you find that the whiskey market is quite different here in South Africa compared to overseas? Styles that people want is a bit different in South Africa than what people are drinking overseas?
I think here in South Africa we are drinking basically the premier products which are available around the world. What I do see on my travels is a big difference in the market, the consumer in South Africa, to your traditional, let's say, UK market. Yeah. In South Africa, we've definitely got a younger, a better split across both sexes than what you tend to find at, let's say, whiskey festivals in the UK, where it still seems to be pretty much a mature male approach. Yeah. But here in South Africa, we definitely, all the functions I've been to, all the whiskey festivals, especially over the last 10 years, have definitely seen a lowering in the age of people who are enjoying whiskey.
That's amazing.
And also a lot more females, which is great to see.
I was about to say, I've been noticing a lot of females drinking whiskey. Obviously, it's good for the waistline. Depends what you put in it. Not too sweet cocktails, though. Yeah. That's the only thing. About food. What do we eat if we drink whiskey? Would you say is your best pairing? Like, you've done a lot of pairings, I'm sure, a lot in your life, but what is there particular pairings or tastings that you can remember that really stood out for you that you think is the absolute awesome food that goes with whiskey?
Well, firstly, you're right. I mean, in the past it was always food and wine pairings. The last 6 or 7 years definitely seen a growth in food and whiskey pairings. Not being a cook myself or somebody who spends a lot of time in a kitchen, I prefer to braai. Being that sort of guy,
that's also a method.
I normally give the whiskey to the chefs. They taste the whiskies and then they normally come up with superb menus to go with it. But what I have, over the time, especially with the Three Ships 5-year-old and the 10-year-old, which have got quite a little bit of smoky peat in the background, things like a blue cheese on its own, or a blue cheese sauce with a nice steak pairs incredibly well with.
So pungent flavors really can. And
something like Bains, for example. Something like Bains will go really well with, a Cape Malay curry or Cajun-style seafood or chicken. Something which has got a little bit of spiciness itself, actually blends really well with the spicy sweetness of the Bains.
Fantastic, yeah.
Whereas the single malt, probably a little bit heavier, more your meaty style.
Yes, it needs tannin. Okay, it needs, protein pretty much.
Pretty much.
Yeah, loves a bit of the meat. Okay, fantastic. So, yeah, if I would go and buy whiskey and I'm starting to drink whiskey, how would you say it? Like you say, maybe start with this, or how would you approach it?
Yeah, I think that's a difficult, because probably you're going to be influenced by your friends.
Yeah, of course.
And whiskey is incredibly subjective. You can.
People are very label orientated. I've also found.
Listen, we drink a lot with our eyes.
Totally.
The guy who shouts the loudest normally gets heard, and that's the same with advertising budgets and whiskey. If you can take a Tambo for a year, or Santon Square, then you're going to get noticed.
Yes.
Some brands have that power. Some brands have that influence and money to be able to do that. We don't, so we tend to rely on one-on-one interactions. The sort of events you're planning. It's to get liquor on lips, as we call it,
Okay.
get the people to try. Because I think that's the only way. I mean, if you take away the labels and you taste whiskey blind, you might be surprised that some of the hidden gems out there are not the ones with the biggest, fanciest labels and
marketing.
budgets.
Yeah, totally.
So, it really is that journey which you've got to take on your own. Yes, listen to your friends, take advice from them, but,
make up your own mind.
make up your own mind, because it really, they are going to tell you what is their opinion. And they're also going to tell you how to drink it. They're going to say, listen, you just have a dash of water, or you just have 2 blocks of ice, or you must do it this way, you must do it that way. Again, when you're tasting whiskey, I would recommend just a dash of maybe slightly chilled water, just to open up the flavors, to experience it. When you're tasting, no ice at all. Because ice tends to pull in the flavors.
And also don't swirl like wine with all those fumes.
But when you're drinking whiskey, it really is about, once you've found that whiskey which flavor you enjoy, then a lot of the fun is finding how are you now going to enjoy that as a drink. And in a South African climate, which is in summer upwards of 30 plus, you might find it's a long drink at sundowner time. Which again is not the perceived way of maybe drinking whiskey.
Cocktails are becoming big.
Absolutely.
It's
Absolutely.
a big thing, and not necessarily if people think of a cocktail, sweet, and then it's not like that anymore. No. And I'm finding it very interesting because, working on your brands as well, everyone's got its very specific cocktail, and which ones, like Bains likes it, lemons and limes and things like that and so forth as well. The 3 ships were different. We used obviously the ginger ale and so forth. It really works very well.
Yeah, I think the whole idea with what we've tried to do with our whiskies from the James Sevier distillery is also give you a different journey in every bottle.
Okay, that's amazing, yeah.
So we're trying to show you that the whiskey spectrum, from being, Bains, which is a lighter, quite a nice, sweet style, what I said, through to the 10-year-old single malt, which is dry and got maybe more of a smoky palate to it. In between, there are other blended whiskies which, might find, that's the one I enjoy today or tomorrow, and that's what we're trying to do. So when people sometimes say to you, I'm not keen on 3 ships, I don't like 3 ships. Which one of the 3 ships range?
Exactly.
Because, we have actually got a whole family of them.
Yeah, I always perception.
Absolutely.
Perception, and that's why I love speaking to you, learning about more local. I think in South Africa we undermine how much quality, amazing quality we actually have in our country with a liquor spectrum, from gins till whiskeys till wines till all over. And I think we can give worldwide. We can give them a go.
Well, if you look back at the awards which we've garnered over the last decade, across the whole spectrum of our whiskies, the international judges are endorsing the quality which we are trying to produce. They are saying, listen, you're making really good stuff. And I think how my job has changed quite a bit is that having an amazing team here at the James Cedric Distillery allows me to spend more time going out there with our marketing teams and
showing them what's happening,
representing the brands.
Yeah.
And I think what we found is that it's not necessarily the hardest part. Isn't making world-class whiskey anymore, because we've pretty much got that
Under
nailed.
the belt. Oh.
The hardest part now is changing those perceptions.